Welcome to On the Chain. This is Jeff here with co-host Chip. What is going on, Chip? What's going on, everybody out there in the On the Chain world? I'll tell you what's going on. Something interesting. That's right. The financial system right now. And if you can connect all the dots from just the past couple days, it really starts to paint a pretty fascinating picture. We're seeing movement on US stablecoin legislation. Hopefully, we're going to see more of that happening over there in Congress. Ripple releasing new institutional data around digital assets, the RLUSD expanding onto new platforms, and new infrastructure quietly emerging on the XRP Ledger. Now, none of these headlines seem huge on their own, but when you actually put them all together, it's a little like smelling smoke in the kitchen. Something's cooking. And when you zoom out, it starts to look like the rails of the financial system might actually be shifting.
Yeah, and for years, Jeff, the conversation around crypto was mostly about speculation and price. But what we're starting to see is a little bit, I would say, different. And regulation moving forward, which is we've been talking about it on this channel for 6 years, preparing for digital assets, the blockchain networks like XRP, starting to plug directly into real financial infrastructure. So you ready to get this puppy started?
Let's go.
Let's go.
Welcome to On the Chain.
Where we coming in from today? Hawthorne, Florida. Where we coming in today? We got XRP Plumbing coming in from Florida. What is that? Is our Florida peeps in the house? Chad coming in for celebration. Punxsutawney Phil can suck it. There you go. That's that stupid little. What is he? He's a kind of an animal. Is that Punxsutawney? What is he? He's a hedgehog or roadrunner? What is he? He's some kind of thing. I don't know what the hell he is. Hedgehog. He's a hedgehog. Hi all. Narc told me not to come here. I ignored him. Beautiful. I love it. I love that. In fact, beautiful. Narc said, I know Narc told you that, but that's cool. What does Narc know?
I got Abu Dhabi.
It's late now. We have Northeast Ohio. We've got NYC, the shithole. Oh, we got some NYC news today, people. All from Abu Dhabi. What is
groundhog? That's what those are.
I knew what it was. I
couldn't put groundhogs.
I was like, it is a squirrel. Is it some kind of a chipmunk, hedgehog, groundhog? I mean, what do we really talk about groundhogs? That come out once a year to make some stupid prediction nobody cares about. I mean, it's a cool pageantry, and the pomp and pageantry is fun. They hold the hedgehog out, and he goes, he sees his shadow. And meanwhile, you never even hear about it. You never hear from them. A groundhog. What do you ever hear about groundhogs? It's the only time you ever knew what even a groundhog was. Look, we got Kansas in the house. Kansas is in the house. We got Cesspool, New York. Cesspool, New York. Get the hell out of there, guys. Get out. Get out as soon as you can. Jeff, there's so much great stuff coming on. You know, you do show prep for this show, and there's so much good stuff that you can't do it all. We can't do it all. We're already doing an hour and a half show sometimes, Jeff.
That's right.
But look at this. We're going to get Ashish Birla, who is the CEO, founder of Evernorth. I keep pinging him. He's just busy, but he will come on the show. We'll get him on here.
Love to see him on here.
Yeah, we'll definitely get him on. He said he would do the show. When I saw him in New York, he's like, Chip, I'll do the show. I know your show. We'll do it. But, you know, he's got a lot going on. And this Evernorth here, XRP transactions nearing 3 million a day as of this week, up from 1 million per day in 2025. That's triple. That's nearly triple. Yeah, it's pretty good. Price moves attract attention. Activity shows where adoption is growing for more financial assets are moving on chain. Learn more here. And he's got right here, he's got the, there's Ashish. And I did get a chance to ask him about the merch shirt, Jeff, which he'll come on here and answer, because when the day that the SEC v. Ripple suit settled, he had our merch shirt laid out on the chair, and he's like, I'm repping this bad boy today. So he'll come on here and we'll talk about the merch. I think, remember we sold 60 of them. We're like, who bought 60 of them? Well, it turns out probably it was Ripple or somebody at Ripple. And Ashish goes on to say, a commentary I've heard within the XRP community this month is some version of why is XRP price dislodged from adoption metrics? Well, here's my quick take. XRP is not yet a liquidity bridge at scale. I think that is really key. It's not a liquidity bridge at scale. The version of XRP that we believe could drive sustained utility demand is when banks and businesses leverage it as working capital. We see signals from institutional uses growing, not just as fast as from traffic from everyday people. This is not investment advice or price prediction, but I know which set of data we focus on at Evernorth. And Jeff, what is your thought about this statement right there as one of the perpetrators when it comes to price action?
Yeah, not yet a liquidity bridge at scale. The version of XRP that we believe could drive sustained utility demand is when banks and businesses leverage it as working capital. And I think that's actually spot on. So up until this point, if we look at where the price point of XRP is, it's all based on speculation. It's all based on hype and FOMO. So once we start seeing actual utility, if we can see them leveraging and these institutions levering XRP in working capital, if they're looking for liquidity, they're looking for it's really going to come down to utility and building and infrastructure. Until you start seeing that happen, it's still going to be in a speculative, and people are continuously over all these years, everyone wants to know when we're going to see XRP split from or decouple from Bitcoin. It's not going to happen until that's in place. Bitcoin's going to lead the market, only because that's the big record. And we talk about this all the time, but Bitcoin has its use case. It's a store of value. That's it. And so it's been identified already, and it has first name recognition in the space. XRP needs something more to push it to the next level. We're getting there. We're starting to see, like with the RLUSD, we're starting to see recognition with ETFs. I think ETFs are going to be a big push.
Oh yeah,
still young, but this is like the next big cycle that's going to move things forward.
Yeah, and right here, Designation 8 said, I got XRP when it was 20 cents. Should I keep holding long term? I mean, nobody can tell you what you should do, but given where the space is probably going, and given the fact that we've already seen XRP surpass $3.50, so I mean, it's pretty predictable that at some point it will get up to that high or surpass it. But what Jeff is alluding to here is we talk about the ETFs, and then we also take a look at what Evernorth is doing, like having that liquidity available, creating that to be able to use that liquidity bridge at scale. It's going to be a differentiator. Also, too, I think Ripple's refocus on how they are looking at what's going on in the ecosystem with the ZaoDao coming up on 1,000 members. If you haven't joined ZaoDao, go to ZaoDao, XAODAO.io, and go ahead and join. It's $10. You pay it in the equivalent of XRP. But when it hits 1,000 members, that's when the proposals can start. That's when you can start voting on proposals. That's when we can see ZaoDao, the community, having a voice in what happens and what gets built, because it comes down to builders in the ecosystem too. Jeff and I have always been big advocates of that. If you don't have anybody building in the community and leveraging the XRPL, it can't be all institutional, and it can't all be on Ripple. Ripple's doing their part, but the Ripple has a business to run. They've got shareholders, so they've got to worry about that. But yeah, Bill Murray did have a movie. It was called Groundhog Day, where he woke up every morning and the day repeated. And sometimes I feel like in life, sometimes we have those Groundhog Days where you wake up and you're like, didn't I just do this yesterday and the day before and the day before? Like elements of your life just sort of like and then we also have Cash Velocity says now do Flare. We should be getting some traction. Yeah, Flare is so inexpensive right now. People will be like, oh, stop moving right now. But what they're building, and also what they're doing on the Bitcoin front as well. Bitcoin, they're bringing two huge communities in, XRP community, but also the Bitcoiners. And Doge at some point will come in, as it'll make utility for Doge. And you think about where it could potentially go. Yeah, 1 penny, 2 penny. People are like, I'm not going to buy it then. But then when it's at like 40 or 50 cents, people are like, oh, I had the chance to buy it at a penny. I don't know. I was sleeping on it. So you never really know. Bitcoin needs to fork to become quantum resistant. That will be fun. At some point, it has to happen. There's got to be something there. Jim D says, well, holding on is risks wetting your britches from a benign hyperplasma. We haven't heard that word britches in a long time. That's a great word. My grandma used to say all the time, yeah, get your britches over here. Your britches. Britches. What a great word. They say we were young and we don't know. That's right. That's what they say. And so Evernorth put this statement out, Jeff. They put out this press release, Evernorth to go public with over $1 billion in gross proceeds. And this is from what they reiterated last year. Evernorth Holdings formed a Nevada corporation, will enable XRP adoption at an institutional scale, public launch of the execution of business combination with the Armada Acquisition Corp. Transaction expected to raise over $1 billion in gross proceeds, including $200 million from SBI. You know, SBI has been very steeped over the bank in Japan, very steeped, also a Ripple shareholder, and additional investments from Ripple. Ripple Works, an independent charitable foundation supporting social impact ventures globally and leading the digital asset and fintech leaders. So this Evernorth thing it felt like it came out of nowhere, but when you saw Ashish Burla was involved with it, it made a lot more sense. It started making a lot of sense. Here's Reese Merrick. Reese Merrick, another Rippler. He's a senior executive officer and managing director of Middle East and Africa. All of these are his own, but check this out, Jeff. He says the debate is over. The Ripple 2026 survey of 1,000 plus financial leaders provides insight into where finance is going. So 72% of finance leaders say that digital assets are now table stakes. 74% see stable coins as a treasury tool for not just for payments. And 89% say custody is a top priority. 71% of corporates prefer a one-stop shop infrastructure provider. These are big numbers, Jeff. Like this isn't like 20%, 30% we saw in years past. We're talking about over 70%, as high as 90% think custody is a top priority. And if you think about what Ripple's doing, they offer all these, right? They have their own stablecoin, RLUSD. They have their own custody solution. They prefer a one-stop shop. They have a one-stop shop provider. So this is all beneficial to Ripple and some of the top acquisitions they've made over the last 4 years.
That's interesting. It's quite an interesting survey, overall, and you really start digging in to identify growth within the space and leadership in the space. I like seeing pure development. I think based on and everybody becomes very Ripple centric, and I think as you really identify builders, that's why we talk about Flare, we talk about Ripple. We're bringing up Zaldao. Zaldao hits 1,000. We're going to see exponential growth within the platforms. Then, from there, looking for more development in the space, and it's unfortunate that over all these years, we haven't had more than a handful of companies to really focus in on that are expanding in the XRPL, that are seeing, massive growth and internal adoption, like what we're seeing, from Ripple and Flare in the directions that they're building in. It would be nice to be able to focus in on other projects as well. But, from Ripple's perspective, doing that survey is really showing what's happening from a financial infrastructural perspective. And that is where Main Street's at. Main Street adoption, Main Street acceptance of crypto asset through stablecoin and kind of beyond. So that's where
100%,
like these surveys, yeah.
Jeff, take this next story update on what's going on with the Clarity Act here.
Yeah, let's see where are we with the Clarity Act? That's what I would like to know, because here we finally have a bipartisan deal coming together. And so let's see what we have. The Clarity Act just cleared its biggest hurdle. Senator Tom Tillis from North Carolina, Republican, and Senator Angela also Brooks, Democrat out of Maryland. Imagine having that name run around. They're also Brooks. Not just
what about
Angela,
Brooks?
but
Also Brooks. There's Brooks and also Brooks.
Also Brooks. It was confirmed Friday. They have an agreement in principle with the White House on stablecoin yield language that stalled crypto market structure legislation for months. Senator Tillis and I do have an agreement in principle, also Brooks said. It will allow us to protect innovation, but also give us the opportunity to prevent widespread deposit flight, which is obviously they're thinking from a banking structure perspective. Tillis added, in working with the White House, I think we have an agreement. Now we have to vet it with the industry because they are a party to an ultimate deal. The fact that they're even contemplating going to the industry is a big deal, because typically you'll see them just start voting on policy and they don't bring in industry leaders, or they're bringing the wrong leaders.
Jeff, if I may interject here, the reason they're thinking that way is because we saw the last election cycle how pivotal crypto was, and the pro-crypto candidates won, whether even the pro-crypto Democrats won. The ones that were not pro-crypto got destroyed. So they understand this is a big deal, but you're right, doesn't matter, because a lot of times that gets ignored. But I think that's why they're paying a closer attention to it.
Yeah, I think so too. It's a really good point. The bill could now move to a Senate vote within weeks. Wow, weeks away. If passed, it would end regulation by enforcement and bring clear rules on token classification, intermediary standards, RWA tokenization, and small transaction tax clarity, which, just do away with the tax. Forget the tax.
Just get rid of it.
Just get rid of that over taxation. That was probably the Democrats wanted that part in.
Of course.
The House passed the Clarity Act in July 2025. The Senate version has been stuck in banking committee over the stablecoin yield fight between banks and crypto firms. That fight is coming to an end. It might be over. So let's see how that all pans out. And the banks are doing everything they can to make sure that they get a piece of the action. They don't want to lose the action. I'm going to stick to what we always talk about. Which one comes first? Do the banks start buying up crypto houses, or do the crypto houses start buying up banks? And we're probably going to see a combination of both. But I think there's more money floating around with some of the crypto houses, like, what we see over at Kraken or Gemini, or, what we're seeing with Coinbase and what we're seeing with Ripple. Ripple's got so much money floating out there. Some of these banks, they're just prime purchases. And so I think we're going to start seeing some interesting times ahead. They passed that legislation, which is a big play. Once that goes through, then we're going to start seeing some massive acquisition. And so 26, 27 is probably going to be more interesting, because 26 is legislation year, plus it's an election cycle. So I think they're probably going to wait, and see exactly how that all pans out in November for midterms here in 26. That pushes us into 27 to start seeing how these, acquisitions play out. And that's going to be interesting. And things are shifting. It's going to shift dramatically.
Yeah, and Lucky Star commented that yes, the agreement is we get zero yield. And the funny part about it is, if you're in the crypto community, you don't really care too much about stablecoins. Now, if you're looking to park some capital, let's say there's volatility in the market and you just want to park it into a stablecoin for a little bit till you kind of see what's going on. Yeah, okay. If you're looking for maybe an off ramp and you kind of want to just park some there, price goes up, you want to park 20% of your portfolio into a stablecoin. But in the crypto business, what do we really care? I mean, most of the yield's going to come off of another altcoin token, right, or Bitcoin itself. So what do you really care? I think more or less that is for people. It's for a different segment. And I understand the banks are worried about outflows, but the outflows are going to go out of the bank into an altcoin. Now, it won't hit the general public where they might do it, but banks are missing a big opportunity. Of course, all they did was Google this, and Google. How does Google know? A tentative agreement between the senators follows the Genius Act. We don't even know what that is. But the key, if I go back to the point that was made in the previous one, they say agreed in principle. Well, the principle was you get yield on stable coins. That was the principle. So if you've agreed on principle, if you change that principle, then say that, hey, we have a compromise, but don't say we've agreed in principle, because the principle was that you were going to be able to get yield on stable coins. And the banks are worried about the outflows. The outflows will happen without it. The crypto savvy people will leave the banks anyway. So they're missing a huge potential opportunity here in the long run. So I don't really worry about that.
It's a net positive though, Chip. And I think that's where, some within the crypto space, they really need to look at this as a net positive. Once banks and financial institutions, or, first, obviously, full regulatory clarity allows the financial institutions and the banks to really start recognizing stablecoin as true financial instruments that can be utilized within the ecosystem. Once we see that happen, it also is going to open up the door even further for more institutional capital to flood into crypto projects. So we're going to see banks custody over stablecoin. We're going to see payment processing integrating stablecoin. We're going to see asset managers that are incorporating. And so across the board, it's going to be fairly impressive. So we have institutional trading. Obviously, we have to look towards tokenized asset. Then you have settlement rails, all the different things that have to be orchestrated within the financial institution. And this opens up the door to so much more. And so that's where we have to really consider that this move is probably one of the biggest, obviously the biggest piece of legislation that we've seen up to this point that is going to transform the entire industry. So
100%.
Stay tuned for tokenized treasuries, tokenized stocks, tokenized real estate, tokenized commodities, and we're
moving there. And
moving.
a really good, yeah. It's the market's changing at a fast pace. Thank God. Well, that's what happens when you have a pro-crypto administration and president, right? Turns out that's all we really needed. I mean, the Moon Boys and the people are like, oh, the SEC issued a thing, a statement saying that XRP and other altcoins are crypto commodities. Well, it doesn't really matter because if you remember back to Chevron, agencies don't make rules that aren't grounded in legislation. And what interpretation of what is that interpretation of 1933-34 security laws? Is that pertaining to the 1947 Howey test? This is all BS. It doesn't matter. You can make up all the rules you want. The new chair is no different than the last chair. The new chair is just Gary Gensler with a different mask. His mask is pro-crypto. The last chair was anti-crypto. So you hate the fact that when Gensler was basically enforcing, it was, what did they say? It was like constantly, enforcing through legislation or actually through prosecution. But that you didn't like that, but you like it when a guy says, "Oh yeah, it's all pro crypto now." Well, it's not grounded in any legislation, and it's meaningless. And all the goofy boys, like the bankless guys, you think those guys would know better? But sometimes I wonder if they're not dumber than rocks. I really have to wonder because they make some dumb statements, and they should know better. They're really steeped in it. They have a lot of people on it from the industry. Jim D makes a good point here. He says, what may prove to be an ironic best use case for XRP moving the global debts all around the planet in a digital game of musical chairs to rug pull others. Tokenize all the debt. There you go. That could possibly be it.
I like that idea, though. I think tokenized debt allows people to, if you can tokenize and then invest in debt, what better thing can you do? I mean, that's amazing.
I smell the startup idea, Jeff.
I like the idea.
PB 2981 says, greetings from Slovakia. You guys are great. Well, good. Leave a comment because our comments look like, and our videos are like, you guys are the most boring two people. And they write this whole diatribe about how they hate us. We read them on air. And I'm like, well, thanks for taking the time because people that like us don't even take the time to say hello, So I always appreciate you guys coming in and saying that fractional lending will. There you go. Yep. Fractional lending. 75% of chance of passing now in April, the Clarity Act. Yeah, and we've heard this from a lot of the naysayers. It will never pass this year. The whole year will pass by. The midterms are coming and won't pass. Look, this is that and the Save America Act is the two most popular things that basically have to pass. There isn't really no other important legislature. And, everything passes the House, and the Senate is where bills go to die. Senate is the most useless thing in the entire world. They are absolute garbage. Moving on here, we got T54.ai. Agent commerce is coming to XRPL. With Virtuals IO, agents can transact autonomously, escrow jobs verification through evaluators and program settlement. Using T54's X402 facilitator, agents can already natively pay an XRP and RLUSD. Then we have RippleX took that and they commented and said, agent commerce coming to the XRPL. And then on top of that, Virtuals Protocol, this is what they're naming in the article. Virtuals Protocol, Virtuals is powering agent commerce in the XRPL, 95 billion plus in cumulative transactions volume, 75 plus regulatory licenses across global markets. The ledger built from day one for payments is now extending to agent commerce together with T54 AI. Virtuals is bringing the commerce infrastructure for agents to transact. And this is powerful. These kind of companies that are doing this are actually making a lot of groundwork and moving forward on the XRPL. Then you've got iTrust announcing that Ripple USD, known as RLUSD, is now available at iTrust. If you guys don't have an iTrust account, they are you can get one. We should be using our link, Jeff. Our link to.
We do need to use our link.
We have to use our link, but we'll start promoting that. But what's nice about that is we benefit and you benefit. So you get money, we get money. So if you hold off a little bit, we'll make the link available, put it in down there, and that way we can both benefit. But this is big too. And what is, iTrust Capital is not only they're a custody provider, but they're also used for like 401k type accounts, retirement accounts that you can sock away money. So better on the taxes. Like if you're a long-term hodler and you're 45 or 50 years old, it makes sense to just throw it in there. And that way, when you pull it out, the taxing is a little easier than if you're going to, and again, it depends on what happens with this clarity legislation. They're saying micro payments on the taxation. They might make it $600 or less, doesn't get taxed, which means there's be a lot of outflows of $600 payments, so that people don't get taxed on it. So iTrust is a good custody solution as well. We're not promoting one over the other. We're just saying they offer that. And if it's something you want to look in and do your research on, then you can do that. So a lot of them, Caleb and Brown, there's a ton of those type of organizations out there that do that, which is absolutely fantastic. iTrust, you have to have Roth IRAs. That is correct. I have one over there. But I have my stuff split up too. I have it on another provider as well. So, I like to, the same way as with crypto, you shouldn't have it all in one place. It should be split. If you're going to do self-custody, have it across few different self-custody solutions. You don't want to put it all on one. If you're someone that likes to keep it on exchange, same thing, spread it out. If you're somebody that likes to do a combination, but it should never be in one. Fractional licensing will continue per the bill. Yep. Of course it will. But look, you can hold back people for a certain period of time, but the banks eventually will. Either they're going to adopt. It's the same. We saw this, like the internet came on there, newspapers were huge, and the newspapers never adopted. They were always like, yeah, we'll put our newspaper online. Yeah, we'll try to put a paywall up, but they basically lost a lot of ground. I can remember my parents were always like there was always a couple papers stacked up because they would read the newspaper every day. I'm like, I couldn't be bothered to ever read a newspaper. First of all, I hated the feel of it on my hands. But even when I was younger, I was always been digital. Somebody asked me the other day, like, hey, do you have checks? Can you write a check? I go, dude, I hate to tell you this, but I haven't had a checkbook since 1997. I went all online, all in on payments. So I have to ask my wife if she can. Sometimes she has to bail me out with a check. She still has checks. I don't have checks. I don't use them for anything. Everything I pay is online. So, I've been boom. Yeah, I've had, people like I've had basically a strong internet connection since 97 as well. People were like, oh, they're still using dial-up and stuff. Not here. Big adopter, Jeff.
That's right.
I want to talk a little bit about this. The Trump hosted Prime Minister Takashi Sinai for dinner at the White House. She was in town, so we got some clips to play from that. Japan, huge ally partner of the United States. Here is the I want to show the video. Now, a lot of this is in Japanese, but for a reason, because I want to show you how the Prime Minister's office in Japan views the visit of the Prime Minister coming to the U.S. This isn't from a U.S. perspective, it's from a Japanese perspective. So some of it's going to be in Japanese, but there's a reason I want to show it in the way that they're positioning it for use in Japan. Here we go. There's the Prime Minister.
I want to congratulate the Prime Minister on that unbelievable, all over the world they were talking about it, that victory in last month's election, winning by numbers that, as I said, nobody's ever seen in Japan before.
今年日本からワシントン DC に250本の桜をプレゼントして250年を祝います。
There's the Prime Minister
本当は桜の花束を抱えて、
Not on nice to see you again.
ってやりたかったんですけれども、米国は検疫が厳しくていきなり花を持ち込めないってことにドナルドと と親交が深かった、安倍晋三、元総理がかつてこのワシントン
I've never seen anybody happier to be at the White House, Jeff. This was like, she's usually she's pretty, poker face, but man. And when I saw her looking at the Biden auto pen picture on the wall, she was laughing at it. That was one of the greatest moments. I couldn't find the clip. I did see it online, but I couldn't find it. But here it is. They're walking hand in hand.
Amazing.
Japan is back.
Japan is back.
Japan is back.
I love that.
Yes.
And that's right from the Prime Minister's office. So it's nice the way they positioned it. They showed, the violins playing at the White House. They showed all the people there.
Awesome.
It's nice to see the positioning from their side, and viewing this as a big deal. And I think it definitely is a big deal. Here's
Trump was just funny.
Yeah, Trump was great. Well, we have those clips here, but let's watch this.
I'm delighted to welcome a great friend and partner for her very first visit to the White House. We've become very close, so close that I endorsed her for her election. And she did well. She got the highest number ever gotten by somebody running for the highest position in Japan, beating out a lot of our friends. And it's a tremendous tribute. And that's our really amazing friend, the Japanese Prime Minister, who's going to speak in just a few minutes. But we're very honored to have you with us tonight. Thank you.
It's really great to see that, Jeff.
It was really awesome, especially everything she's been doing in Japan. Setting Japan straight. So
she's on
really,
fire.
really important. Oh man.
Yeah, and I just saw something too where on the floor of, I don't know what their one of the representatives was saying that there will be no mosques, there will be no Muslims buried in Japan. There will be none of that. They don't want anything to do with it. They're cutting it all off because they see what's happening around the world. They see the takeover. And this is the one thing I really appreciate. I was in Japan with my wife in December for almost 2 weeks. And I have to say that, the Japanese culture is phenomenal. I love how amazingly disciplined they are. But it's amazing to see how they treat their elderly. It's amazing to see how well behaved the young kids are. The real young kids that can be a pain in the ass and whining and crying, but they're very well behaved. And just getting on a subway and just hearing quiet, and seeing how perfectly Jeff's over there laughing at something. I don't know what he's laughing at, but seeing coffee. Okay, you got the coffee, good. But it was, but just that's it. The reason we visited Japan is we want to see Japanese culture the same way. If we go to Paris, we want to see French culture, and guess what? It doesn't exist anymore. And the UK is gone. I don't see the UK coming back. The UK is done, unless there's some sort of a civil war, which I think may be brewing over there. The UK is done. It's been conquered by Islam, and it will become an Islamic state. And they're slowly not becoming allies anyway, because you got Powder Puff loser over there and Keir Starmer, who's one of the most ineffective pussy boys that ever existed on the planet.
He's the worst.
Look at this. So here we go. We continue with the Japanese Prime Minister.
The States and Japan can be an unstoppable force for freedom, security, and progress for our countries and for the entire world to look up to. So let us stand together with the strength and dignity, purpose. Let us keep our people safe, our nations prospering, and our alliance flourishing for many, many generations to come. And with that, I'd just like to thank the Prime Minister. This is a spectacular woman, and it's an honor to have you with us at the White House. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's been really fantastic to see this
awesome
come together, and it's really one of our greatest allies. And this is how an ally treats the United States.
Right.
They've made a significant investment in the United States, showing that, has the UK made any investments? Zero. Have they done anything? No. And here's the baby version of something that did take place, where Jeff was talking about the, some of the humor of Donald Trump. But this one was funny. I mean, so many of my friends who, they don't really send me much, but they all pounded me with this as if I had not seen it. But I was like, this is awesome.
Exactly.
Right? Isn't that funny, Jeff? Like, you have those friends out there, they're like, oh, Jeff will really like this. And dude, you've seen it already. But it's just great that it's resonating with so many people. But this is the diaper version of it, that one X account that does diaper diplomacy. Here you go.
Pick a beautiful person from Japan. A question for the Prime Minister. Go ahead. Yeah. Sure. Oh, he doesn't believe he's beautiful. Oh,
I gather.
He's sounding shy. Go ahead, please.
Of course, no, Japan and US are very good friends. But one question: why didn't you tell US allies
Keir Starmer
in Asia, like Japan, about the war before attacking Iran? So we are very confused about we Japanese citizens.
Well, one thing, you don't want to signal too much. You know, when we go in, we went in very hard, and we didn't tell anybody about it because we wanted surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay, why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? Okay, right? You know,
Tell me about
he's
Pearl
asking me. Now you believe in surprise, I think much more so than us, and we had to surprise him, and we did. And because of that surprise, we knocked out, the first 2 days, we probably knocked out 50% of what and much more than we anticipated doing. So if I go and tell everybody about it, there's no longer a surprise.
That was great. Diaper diplomacy. I love it.
They do some of the best videos, Jeff. I really have to get my hats off to them. They do a tremendous job of putting those videos out. My God, that was really a really fun sort of exchange. It's funny because what I've heard from some friends in Japan that's saying that they believe, the Japanese people believe they're invited. There's been a little bit of revisionist history going on there where, that they were not necessarily as aggressive. It's been sort of downplayed a little bit. Prime Minister Kachi put this out here, and this is from their perspective. Thank you, President Trump, for your warm hospitality today at the White House and this evening's dinner. We had a substantive and forward-looking discussions across a wide range of issues, reaffirming the strength of the Japan-U.S. alliance. It was truly meaningful and a productive day. I look forward to continuing close cooperation between Japan and the United States to make our two nations stronger and more prosperous. And of course, she also put
Now read it in Japanese.
Nope, I ain't gonna do it. But here's what the pictures they shared. So they had the I don't know if this is the Armed Forces band, but they had the band playing the violins, and the honor. And then here is the conversation we're speaking. It's funny. It's great to see Abe Lincoln just looking out after everything over there up top there on Abe Lincoln's portrait.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
and then you've got her talking and smiling and happy and just, being treated like given the royal sort of the welcome, that you would see with any dinner. And hopefully in the future
outstanding.
They're not going to be standing outside in a tent, which is how they have these state dinners now, but they'll have the ballroom will be finished. They'll have a beautiful ballroom to actually have these hosted sort of events there.
Yeah, they're building an amazing ballroom that wasn't paid for with tax dollars.
100%
privately funded.
And from the U.S. side, this is what the official White House account shared right here. So you have President Donald J. Trump and Prime Minister Takachi right here. There they are right there. It's fun to see them both with the hands up. But you almost never seen her this happy because she's always very stern-faced, and it's like she's happy to be there. You can definitely tell that there's something, very special between.
Well, this is how the U.S. works with partners. True
100%.
Coalition partners. And then when you stab the U.S. in the back, and especially with Trump at the helm, you stab Trump in the back, and you think that that's going to go unnoticed. Previous administrations, the Europeans and everybody just walked all over our leadership. And now we have there's a lion in the room, and they don't really know how to respond to it anymore. And so you think about years and years past, the U.S. had that kind of bravado. And then we've had all these kind of, weak feckle leaders that kind of allowed our country to be kind of demoralized. And so now you have a lion at the helm again. And it's just like, holy cow, this is going to attract the allies that we're attracting now. You can see where the true partnerships are. You can see who really shares a similar vision, towards freedom. And this is it. And getting rid of that deep state that is really infecting and affecting everybody, every country. And that's you look at what's happening over in England. And so once we get kind of wrap up with this, it's just a segue into a question here. So, and I think this is kind of an interesting question to pose after this, but let's kind of finish up with this part here.
So one thing that the Prime Minister said is, I firmly believe that it is only you, Donald, who can achieve peace across the world. To do so, I'm ready to reach out to many of the partners in the international community to achieve this objective together. And people are misunderstanding the whole mission in Iran, because they're, they have boots on the ground. Is it a failed mission? Working against the U.S. With propaganda coming out of the U.S. And no, it's never been that way. And they did the same thing with Venezuela, in and out. And it happened so fast they couldn't even spread the nonsense, fake news, propaganda. But again, realizing this is a strong statement, especially from somebody, an ally like Japan, saying that there's an understanding of what is really at the heart of all this, which is peace across the world, right? This is what it's really about. And when you have the #1 state sponsor of terrorism, you're taking that out. And when you're liberating women that have been mistreated for 47 years, you would think that the left and they don't know what a woman is, but if they did know what a woman was, they would be happy to know that these women are, on their way to liberation, the same of what's going on in other countries. But again, you saw how the partners have stood by the U.S. and have committed that the money they said they were going to commit to the U.S., even though Iran was attacked, even though it's a Muslim country, only because of the domination, you see that they're still on board with the U.S. You see that they fought side by side with the U.S. If you said this 10 years ago, it would have been unimaginable, Jeff. It's simply just something that is so incredible to watch, that we're almost at a time where we're at almost a disbelief. But put that comment back up.
So, before I just want to quick, and it's interesting with Japan specific. There was a book that I read for school. And this would have been probably early 90s. And the book was titled The Coming War with Japan. And it was all about the steel industry and things that the Japanese were doing to undermine. And you think about through the 80s, the real estate acquisitions throughout the United States by Japan and the economy. And this was the coming war as more of an economic war. But that was kind of the mindset at the time. Also, is that things were coming to a head with the U.S. and Japan as they were kind of stepping into the space. And then the Japanese kind of had some issues with their internal economy for many years, and then we never really thought about it again. And then that same issue kind of sidestepped itself over to China and elsewhere. But it's just kind of interesting dynamic to see, coming back together with a true ally with Japan, sharing the same vision. But to this comment here, Chip, and I just a preface based off of what she said in that statement, Trump is the only one that can bring world peace together. 2020 wasn't a test for global domination of controlling the population. 2020 was a test to take down Trump. That's what it was all about. It was, can the deep state get together on a global scale and take down a president of the United States? That's what the test was. And we saw it almost very effectively as they brought the entire world to its knees, crippling economies, shut everything down. And that's where you saw how deeply entrenched the deep state really was on a global scale. And what we saw go in 2016, it was all about, the joke from the media. The media played a big part of it. Global leadership played a huge part of it, because none of them, saw Trump as a legitimate candidate to take over in 16. When he did, it was a shock to the system, because Trump came in and he said, "This is what I'm going to do," and it's exactly what he did. There was no wiggle room, and he was a player that nobody could manipulate, because he was already influential on a global scale, and people knew that he was influential. So the lion walked into the room in 2016. The entire world, the whole infrastructure came together to take him down. Now, is there an energy lockdown? This is my opinion. Love to get your opinion on this. Is there a lockdown? I don't think there's a lockdown coming. If we didn't have Trump in the office and we're in this situation right now, I would say, hey, we're probably up for some, we're going down Schitt's Creek. But we do. there's things being put together and orchestrating so that doesn't happen. But what I can say is that, all of this whole global, dominance, what the left and the deep state has done to undermine the movement towards freedom is the move of these illegal immigrants into Western civilization, which is purposely was put into place in order to cripple Western civilization and to have a direct impact on a president, like Trump, to help bring and navigate the US in the right direction, and the whole world. The whole world is benefiting from what Trump's doing. What we're doing in Iran is all part of the puzzle to get rid of what this deep state and the leftist institutions around the world have started by bringing in the mass illegal immigration. All the pieces are falling into place little by little. So when you start looking at the orchestration of it, this relationship and the meeting with Japan was critical at this juncture to show a powerful ally how we're working together and we're lockstep together with what's going on in the Middle East, with Israel lockstep, taking down Iran, the whole Middle East region lockstep with Trump on the removal of Iran as a threat, the removal of and the change of direction in Venezuela, and soon you're going to see Cuba. And then there's only a few pieces left, and China is suffering right now, and that's a big part of it also. So China has been funding and undermining a lot through technology that they've put and placed all over the world, that had been corrupted, and that's their kind of their spy agency. And then you have Iran, which was a big financier for the 47 years of terror throughout the world, throughout the entire world. Everybody's happy that Iran's been taken down. Everybody, the whole Middle East region, happy. The whole Middle East region happy with what Israel's doing over there also. And so it's super, super impressive. But that's kind of my take. I saw this comment. I'm like, man, you got to take, take a step backwards and see exactly what's happening. But Chip, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, I just don't see an energy lockdown. I think we're going to see an energy boom coming.
It depends on the ideology. If you are a leftist, then you're in your global domination. You believe in centralization, which is why the Democrats are all against any kind of decentralization. They love to control everything. They want to control every aspect of your life. And if you look in Florida, like in Florida, Jeff, none of my friends that live in New York, where I'm from, none of them could believe that when I would show them pictures 2 weeks later, like, on Atlantic Avenue, just like everyone's out partying, having a great time. Nobody's wearing masks. And they're like, where is this? When did you take this picture? I go, like 5 minutes ago. They're like, that's Florida now? I'm like, it's right now. They're like, oh, we're not allowed to leave our houses. I'm like, well, then good luck. I mean, you live in New York. So when I think of who's running the show, someone like a Trump, somebody like, when you look at maybe some other countries, that are more conservative leaning and more freedom leaning, you're going to have that. You're going to have that whether you're in Hungary or you're in Poland or you're in South America. If you're Bukele and you're El Salvador, you're not going to have this oppression. But I believe everything you said, Jeff. The whole idea was to get Trump out of office, and you could tell the people that this is what happened. You can tell them that the election was stolen. They were told. I have a lot of stuff on election fraud today that with the numbers, the numbers are there. And nobody wanted to believe it, but you can't tell people. You've got to show them. Everybody warned about Mamdani, and the Muslim takeover in New York City, but they were like, oh, you are just one of those Islamic freaks. You're anti-Islam, blah, blah, blah. And well, now they're getting a royal taste of it with the call to prayer being blasted at 5:30 in the morning. I hope it gets so loud that it's louder than a Metallica concert. I hope it gets so loud because you voted for it, and I hope it gets shoved right up your ass. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you enjoy all the oppressions coming your way. I hope you enjoy the high taxes, the rent increases, the taxing the rich. I hope you enjoy it all, but that's all by design. They want all the people who were born there to move out. So when it comes to 2020, this whole lockdown, I think what we learned, Jeff, was how easy it was and how stupid people are. 6 feet away, you go into a restaurant, you had a mask on, but when you were sitting down and eating, you took the mask off because the virus knows not to mess with you. It only messes with people that aren't standing 6 feet away and aren't eating. So the hypocrisy was so rich. You were like Darwin Award winning. And you thought to yourself, like, well, you know that the mask doesn't stop the virus, right? Then some mask studies came out. So the whole thing was a joke. And nobody really needed the vaccine. And it wasn't a vaccine. If you go to CDC and they changed the definition of a vaccine, because has anybody out there got their polio boosters recently? No, because the polio was a real vaccine. You got to get a booster. That should be your first sign of the vaccine doesn't work. But nobody exercised any critical thinking during that whole period. So yeah, there was a lot of gullibility. Government's pushing this nonsense across everything. And then I laugh at something like this. This makes me laugh because this is probably one of the dumbest statements you could actually put forth. After John F. Kennedy, every president's been a banker's president. Trump is nothing but a pacifier president. He's doing what the banking cartel told Trump at every angle. The funny thing about Trump is Trump doesn't need anybody. And he gives zero F's about anybody, and he does whatever he wants. And people are like, oh, the reason he's in this war is because Israel's holding him hostage. Well, he came out and blasted Netanyahu for attacking an energy, bombing one of the high-producing sort of oil and gas, and saying, don't do that again. And he also restrained him, too, and said, no, it's not time to go in yet. So, but people aren't paying attention because they're, because he's a Zionist and blah, blah, blah. And people are just, the Jews get blamed for everything. Right behind that is the Christians. But the Muslims, who cares if they beat their women? Who cares if they have 6 wives? Who cares if they marry when they're 6 and they wait till they're 9 years old? Who cares if they worship a pedophile who had multiple wives and one as young as 9 years old? Who cares about that? Who cares if you don't believe what they believe? They chop your head off. So there's all that going on top of it. Let's segue a little bit here. Elizabeth Warren, this is great. No, this is a great statement. When Pete Hegseth was going to the confirmation hearing, Elizabeth Pocahontas Warren wrote an entire letter about how Das Volt tattoo made him a right-wing extremist, unfit for service. She just endorsed the guy with the Nazi tattoo. Here she is with the Nazi for U.S. Senate, Graham Plattner for U.S. Senate, who has a Nazi tattoo. These people are just pathetic, Jeff, on so many different levels. The great Chuck Norris just passed away. Chuck was a great guy. There's all the Chuck Norris jokes and everything. But Chuck Norris, this is Chuck Norris talking about when he used to be a Democrat.
Are you a conservative, sir?
Well, I used to be a Democrat, but unfortunately the Democrats went too far to the left, and the Republicans moved into their position that the Democrats were 40 years ago. See, and so what the Democrats believed 40 years ago, the Republicans believe today. And so I realized that I had to go to a Republican because the Democrats just got too far off the trail. They just got completely off the trail and lost all reality of what America stood for. And so I realized that Republicans at this point in time are more focused on what is best for America than what the Democrats are.
What do you think about that?
That's it.
Sounds
Chuck
about
Norris.
right, doesn't it? And of course, there's a lot of Chuck
I can't believe
Norris.
Chuck died yesterday.
Yeah, 86 years old. Had an episode, ended up, passing away. But the guy was fit. His birthday, I remember watching about a month or whatever it was recently. He was out there fighting. He's boxing and he's training all the time. The guy was super fit at 86. But when it's your time, it's your time. Somebody put this meme out. I gotta catch the music at a certain point, but saying that what would happen when Chuck gets to heaven. So there's all the there's some Islamists partying up there in the clouds. And of course, there's
can't play that.
Yeah, there's Chuck with the angel wings in the boxing stance, and boom, sent down to the depths of hell. There you go. There's a lot of those floating around, and you got him and embracing Bruce Lee up in heaven, and just lots of cool, fun memes and stuff. Do you remember? Speaking of 2020, Jeff, do you remember in the whole lockdown and everything? Do you remember? So, Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, made a statement about, we don't care if you go down to Florida, get out of the, she's changing her tune then and now. Jeff, listen to this.
Of course.
And we're here to say that the era
This is from 2022.
Of Trump and Zeldin and Molinaro, just jump on a bus and head down to Florida where you belong, okay? Get out of town. Get out of town. Because you don't represent our values. You are not
And they left.
Yeah.
New Yorkers. But maybe
So now this is Hochul when reality sits in and tax base is being eroded and they got to raise taxes again to watch more high earners leave. And and you can see that time hasn't been kind either. You got 4 years have passed and she looks like death warmed over here, you know, like look at her demeanor. Rah, rah. Yeah, you're like Trump. Go to Florida. Get out of here. We don't want you. Don't represent our values. I always try to ask a Democrat, what exactly are your values? High taxes, killing your constituents, and supporting illegals and giving them everything they could possibly want: free health care, free money, free room and lodging, clothing. Now, what exactly do you stand for? And I brought this up to somebody in the XRP community who I really respect, and I had to say, like, tell me what you're 24 7 anti-Trump. I get it. Where are your ideas?
Right.
What are you going to do differently? Because what you support right now isn't good, which is why you're losing your base and it's eroding guys like Chuck Norris who left a long time ago. Listen to her.
Across the board, you know what's interesting? So they never learn either. So go back a number of years. The mayor of Detroit, Coleman Young, told the population of Detroit at the time, there's probably in the 60s ish. And he said, look, if you don't, or was it 60s, 70s? I don't know, whenever.
70s. Coleman Young was 26 years he was mayor for or something.
It's a long time. And he basically told people, he said, listen, if you don't like it, you can get the F out. And you know what people did? They left and they moved out to West Bloomfield. They took their entire tax base with them. When was it? What year?
It was from 1974, 20 years, from 74 to the end of 93.
Right. So, and it was impressive when he said that, right? He's like, if you don't like, get the F out, you know? And so people left. They're like, screw you then. They took their money, they took their businesses, they took everything, and they left Detroit. Detroit went from kind of obviously there was the riots, kind of was a beginning of the end over there, but it went from a prosperous tax base to nothing overnight. And people fled, they moved out to the suburbs, and they never looked back. And it's interesting. I mean, now it took years to kind of bring the downtown Detroit area back to some semblance of normalcy. And you're seeing that now, kind of a revitalization. It took big business leaders to try to revitalize the city, but it's that mindset, and they never learn. It's the same thing. It's all about us. And if you don't like it, then screw you. And it's not like, screw you, you want to implement your socialist ideas, you don't like our freedom, but we're going to make it great anyways. It's kind of like, if you don't like me taking all your money, then screw you, leave. We don't need you. And then they're like, oh shit, I guess we needed your money.
Well, here she is this week, Jeff, talking again about, so it's quite the about face in 4 years.
But maybe the first step should be go down to Palm Beach and see who you can bring back home, because our tax base has been eroded. So I philosophically don't have a problem. It is like I have to look at the fact that we are in competition with other states who have less of a tax burden on their corporate.
She almost said who have freedom. I thought she was going to say it. Who have freedom. We can't have freedom here.
On their corporations and their individuals. And I would say remote work changed everything. There were people who could only work in an office in Manhattan or work in New York State, and they were captives to our state. They were going to stay. We saw that that's not the case. I mean, Wall Street businesses looking at Texas, they're not going there because they have a nicer governor. I know that for sure.
Oh, that's exactly why they're going there.
But they're going there because of the tax rate. We have to be smart about this.
They're so stupid. They don't get it. They'll never get it. They'll never understand it. But as soon as they have no money left, and it's interesting that it's now they have the corrupted mayor of New York City, they have the corrupted governor of New York State. They could give a shit about the people. They want to raise taxes, make it socialist, make it impossible to live there. California is the net loser. New York those businesses aren't coming back to New York. I'm sorry to say, New York is done. People aren't going to move their entire business out of state only to say, oh, look, they're getting nice again. Let's move back. No, they're coming to Palm Beach. They're coming to Miami. This is the financial epicenter of the world now. Is coming to South Florida. You're seeing businesses, you're seeing high tech move into Miami. Everybody wants to be in Florida. Florida is steadily turned more and more red, not more and more blue. The Democrats are losing, even in Broward County. You're seeing growth of the voter base turning red, not blue. And that's Broward County. So it's going to take more people, more money. Everybody's coming down. It's getting a little bit too crowded here. So people need to move a little bit further north. You can do suburbs of Tampa. Tampa's, booming. Probably need more Republican leadership there. Orlando, the northern part, Jacksonville, Gainesville, like that whole area. Jacksonville could be impressive too. So people need to be in the northern states and benefit from Atlanta, Georgia climate. Go to Jacksonville. But there's so much going on right now. And New York is a net loser, but New York State as a whole isn't a Democrat state. New York as a whole is kind of red also. But then you have the big city, New York City, and New York City has fleeced New York State for way too long, stolen the tax base. It's, most of the, taxes from New York State have to go to New York City. And it just, now we're seeing the ramification of that.
Look at this, Jeff. So Orwell says here in Virginia, the election was rigged. Now the new governor is trying to outdo California on sanctuary city bullshit. And it's funny. It's like this Abigail Spanberger, who really is she's like another AOC. She's really dumber than rocks. And the funny thing about it was for the Democrats and all their racism bullshit, you had somebody, a hardcore conservative, Winsome Earl Sears, who is a black woman, who was running, who was amazing, and who had the right messaging. It makes zero sense. I mean, there's a lot of DC people that live in Virginia, a lot of Democrats there, but I still don't understand how this lady gets, and then she puts 50 new taxes in. Meanwhile, you had the former lieutenant governor, Winsome Earl Sears, and she was like, her messaging was so right on, a very gifted politician. And the people that are yelling racism, they had nothing to say that, they chose a white woman over a black woman with messaging who resonated with the people, and some dumbass witch. I said that instead of the B word. I used to say that in the car when I was driving with my little girls. They'd be like, "How do you know that she's a witch?" I'm like, "She just looks like a witch." And because I could never say the B word. It was like, "That witch, I can't believe she just cut me off." "Why do you call her a witch? How do you know she's a witch, Bob?" I'm like, "Well, she just, I don't know, she had a couple of boils on her face. I don't know." So, and if you look at right here, Jim D says, "Don't get me started on Virginia. I'm a VMI grad, and the Virginia commies are trying to force the military institute into being running by an all-black college to punish for the Civil War history." And these are the same people yelling racism, but yet they had nothing to say when they voted for a white woman over a black woman. So they're so full of shit. I mean, and then they called this woman, Uncle Tom and all this other stuff, all this racist bullshit. These are the people, the most racist people on the planet are Democrats. They're so worried about race when it works for them. But I'm telling you what, man, they are just ridiculous.
They're race baiting.
Check Laborde says it's easy to bluff when you don't have any chips on the table. Yeah, that's Hochul. She has 0 chips on the table. And the stuff you have going on in New York City, I really am, in a weird way, I'm kind of happy about this, because you can't tell the people. The only thing you can do, Jeff, is show the people, because they just never learn. You got to show them extreme pain, not just uncomfortableness. But here's Mandami's wife.
They have to live the extreme pain. They have to experience extreme pain.
Not only is Mandami's wife a rabid anti-Semite Islamic fanatic, but she's also homophobic and uses the N-word. Oh, and she volunteered to be a suicide bomber if it does good for the cause. I'll be happy to accept death. The New York City mayor, any comments? So this is her here's her stuff right here. She's saying the F, I should say that F, I can't say that, FGTs. You guys can fill it in. And here she is, Robin D, right here. I think by the way, she did, in fact, shut her account down because people were going back through her tweets. She was loving a lot of the stuff. She was liking a lot of the stuff from October 7th. Mm-hmm. And then she's saying, here she is. I think it was the gay ass people from Instagram that finally motivated me to get off the internet. That was in 2013. the gay ass people. And then this person says, talking gangsta with me is genius. And she says, hell yeah, N-I-G-G-A, super duper genius, excuse you. So she loves to use the N-word. She likes to talk about the F-word when describing gay people. And this is Mandami's wife. But I'm sure he marries somebody, because we always get married to people who think exactly opposite of us, right? Who are rabid anti-Semites. We're like, we're cool with that, right? You don't think this is what Mandami thinks? You shouldn't go after my wife because she's not this and that. Well, just to tell you how bad
they support the Islamo-fascist cause.
Yeah, of course. And then here's Mandami here. 2 more top rating bond firms issue a dire warning for New York City over Mandami's budget. So they're going to get the rating dropped, which is going to affect their standard to either borrow or do anything with money related. But this is what you get when you vote for a nut job. Goes out there smiling Ted. Hey, everybody, look, I'm with gay people. Look, I'm with Jews. Look, I'm with everybody. And meanwhile, how well did that work out? And here's Elon Musk to save the day. Now, Jeff, if you've flown anytime recently, you've seen these TSA lines wrapped around airports going outside, 4 to 6 hour waits in Houston, 8-hour waits.
Insane.
Because the Democrats are holding up. Elon Musk said, I'd like to offer to pay the salaries of TSA personnel during this funding impasse that's negatively affecting the lives of so many Americans at airports throughout the country. Patriot, man. He's like, Democrats, you want to hold this over? Great, I'll pay them.
Yeah.
Now what are you going to do?
It's amazing. It's amazing what Elon Musk has done for the cause of freedom, as he starts looking, across the pond as well to what he can do over in England. But what he's done for this country and the world, because this really impacts the whole world, is really impressive. And to do that, to step up like that and say, hey, I'll cover the cost. And he's going to do it, and it's great. I mean, for him, it's going to be a net tax write-off. So, but you don't see anybody else stepping up like that. Really impressive. I love it.
At the polls, you had a clear partisan TDS poll watchers, obvious fraud, try to vote, claimed there wasn't a citizen, made me fill out a provincial ballot out, ended up not being approved. This is ridiculous, man.
They try to stop. I mean, there's so much that's gone on. Everything that they say is just reflecting on their own beliefs. That's part of the Democrat ploy.
But democracy, Jeff, they're yelling democracy. They're always yelling democracy. Here we go here. CBS went full Nick Shirley on Gavin Newsom's California, and I've got the video right here. And if it wasn't for Nick Shirley, Jeff, you would never see a video like this. Obviously, there's somebody new at the helm over there, but look at this. This is crazy to see that this is CBS. It's total Nick Shirley style.
So this building right behind me here
they're
has
doing
89 hospices, and it's the most extreme case of hospices that are all clustered together in all of LA County, and it's known as—
I mean, by the way, Nick Shirley already did this report, the same report, but it's good to see that CBS is like, they realize it's resonating with people. And I also think there's probably going to be a concerted effort to take out Gavin Newsom because they know he's not electable. But they're going to this is what, when the left doesn't like somebody, they'll start floating these kind of news stories they don't want them to run because they know that it's a definite loss. And what Newsom's done to California and the fact that he probably will have a turnover to a Republican, his stock is over. So he did such a bad job. He had the first Republican, in almost 20 years elected.
It's ground zero. We're going to try to go in and see what we can find. Home Health Agency, hospice.
The fact that they're doing this now.
They can see what they can find is exactly Nick Shirley found.
Yeah,
dozens of hospice agencies coming up.
But that shows how
inside the
lazy
lobby,
they are.
there's a directory with a long list of hospice agencies, and the building's owner talked.
I mean, blah, blah, blah. The building's owners did this and he did blah, blah, blah. It's the same garbage.
Think about Nick Shirley. Nick Shirley's what, 23?
23 years old. 23 years old, and he's one of the best independent journalists. Now, I always love Stephen A., but Stephen A. was so shocked about this. He had a rep on from California, and he was shocked to learn this about California. This is funny because this is what you and I already knew, Jeff, but he was shocked. But it just goes to show you, if he's shocked, how many people don't know about this?
That we don't have voter ID in places like California is extremely unusual in democracies across the globe. There's maybe like 2 or 3 democracies in the world that don't have it. This is just kind of like a standard administrative requirement in a well-functioning democracy. So I think we should just have it. We should get this over. We should move on with our lives. It shouldn't be a big controversial issue.
Excuse me for being so ignorant, asking last question. This is definitely my last question. What do you mean you don't have voter ID in California? Could you please elaborate specifically on that for my audience that may not know?
Yeah, California does not have voter ID. You don't need to present it to register. You don't need to present it to vote. As a matter of fact, the state passed a law forbidding voter ID. So cities, counties, if they want
forbidding
ID, they're not allowed to under state law.
What? When did that happen?
A couple of years ago, because I think it was Orange County. They wanted to have their own requirements, so the state passed a law saying, no, you're not allowed to. Voter ID is not only not required, it is actively forbidden.
They went after them.
Well, that's right there. That's why the SAVE Act been proposed. Right there, the state of California. That's what the Republicans going to lean on as an excuse to definitely push forth the SAVE Act. Right there. I can't believe it. I didn't even know that, sir. I'm embarrassed to admit.
There's a lot of crazy things going on in California, but I think, you are seeing a return to sanity in some ways. And I see it, Democrats, Republicans, and independents in California who are saying, we need to do some things differently in this state.
By the way, last thing, that no voter eligibility required. That's Gavin Newsom. Last 2 years, that was Gavin Newsom.
Correct. Well, so the law saying that a locality cannot have its own voter ID requirement. That was Newsom.
There you go. That was Newsom. That's all I needed to know. Thank you, sir. Representative Kevin Colley. Right?
I remember that when Orange County said, no, it's fine if the state doesn't, but here in Orange County, and then they passed that law saying, well, no, sorry, there's no voter ID anywhere in the state. You can't have it. I was like, just pay attention to what's going on. How do you not know?
But you don't know. They slip these things in typically during a down election cycle. They put stuff on the ballot. People vote stuff in. Stuff happens. People are unaware. They phrase it out in confusing double talk language. So most people, if you go through and you go and vote and you read through the ballot and they have any type of proposal, it's always double speak. It's never clear language. It's not even legalese language. They just write it in such a way that it makes it confusing. And you read through it. You're like, oh shit, I don't know if I'm in favor of this or not in favor of it. Which way is this? Am I voting yes or no? I don't understand what their proposal is. And then people will vote on it. And it's so destructive that you go into the ballot box and you go to vote and not understand any of the policy that you're voting on. Right. And they do it 100% on purpose. That's what XRP plumbing say, 100% on purpose in order to get a certain outcome. And obviously the power that's in charge, the ones that are writing the ballot are putting language in there specifically. So you have no idea what you're doing. It's interesting. Jim was saying there must be something in the water in New York City and the kosher eateries. I guarantee you, any of the Jews in New York that go and eat at kosher restaurants and shop at kosher stores did not vote for Mamdani. I can guarantee you that. The majority, anyone that's in that's going to be more orthodox, they're going to be conservative. They're going to vote conservative. They're typically voting Republican. They're not voting. The Jews in New York City that vote Democrat are assimilated, typically atheists, and they're more kind of New York socialist propaganda. And then so you can take out the kosher eateries and kosher restaurants, kosher grocery stores out of that equation, and that's what you get. And that's exactly the explanation. And whether you go into the Jewish community or if you go into a black community, you go into Christian communities, you're going to see the same exact symptom where you have this leftist, ideology for, whatever purpose. And then you'll say, okay, these guys are going to be more conservative. It doesn't make any sense. Why do, Catholics vote Democrat? I don't understand it. It doesn't even fit the narrative, but yet they're still voting Democrat. It doesn't make any sense to me, and it's the same, the same issue across the board.
Catholic.
And then a big part of it also, and that's what Arlen like in Virginia, most machines were electing Democrats, right? Then we see, so there's that component of it. Then you see the corrupted part of the election cycle. just like what happened here in South Florida in 2018 when DeSantis got elected in. We almost lost that election. You guys have no idea how close it was. It all came down to the supervisor of election office in Broward County because of the fact that they were corrupting the election outcome. And going in there, what's her name? She ran that office as it was so confusing, so disorganized, totally on purpose. And that disorganization is what allowed them to cheat and corrupt the system. And it took hundreds of people to stand out in front of the supervisor of election and a push to get attorneys and others inside the supervisor of election to go through and do the recount. And that's where, you know, DeSantis was galvanized as governor of Florida, is because they were trying to corrupt and cheat the system. It 100% happened and will continue to happen all over the country. Virginia is a direct example. Michigan, they have to clean up what's going on. Right. We could have had and it's interesting too. Was he a crackhead, or did they just destroy him because he knew what was happening from the cheating side of it, knew he didn't have a chance? Maybe he found out and they're like, you know what, we're going to destroy him, because he was in on the cheating. So he knew there was no way to win. Something happened there. It was very bizarre. How does he go from normal to abnormal like overnight? Or did they just pick someone abnormal, from the beginning? It was very strange. That whole outcome was so bizarre of what happened with him. It just seemed like they just told it was total setup. And then they destroyed him. And that was it. Washed their hands of it, because now anything he says after that, no one's going to believe him. So, it's crazy.
Hell no. John Morgan from Morgan & Morgan, the next Florida governor. First of all, he's a big Democrat supporter. He's trying to, there should be a middle party BS garbage. No, hell no. It's Byron Donalds all the way. Byron Donalds will be the next Florida governor, not this loser. That much we can say for sure. Let's transition to voter fraud, because we're told, Jeff, there's no voter fraud, but I got some stats here. Listen to what Stephen Miller has to say about voter fraud.
Something, Sean, that your audience may not know. At the beginning of this administration, we asked every state, red and blue, to share with us their voter rolls so that we could scrub it against the DHS file of illegal aliens to remove illegal aliens from their voter rolls. Every blue state refused. California refused. Minnesota refused. New York refused. In fact, they sued us to stop us from removing illegal aliens from the voter rolls, removing non-citizens from the voter rolls. But that's not just the only thing. They don't want to get dead people off the rolls. They don't want to get felons off the rolls. They don't want to get out-of-state voters off the rolls. They don't want to get double and triple voters out of the count, because they want the fraud.
Of course they want the fraud. This is not, everyone's acting like this is something new. And I got into a big dispute the other day with somebody talking about voter fraud, and I started just naming statistics that they'd never heard of before. I said, by the way, in Fulton County, Georgia, 300,000 votes, they came out and said, they shouldn't have counted. Well, Biden only won by 11,000, right? So, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, 300,000. They got to bring Roethlisberger and Kemp. They got to put those guys up, put them before Congress, and they've got to make it. So let's look at some voter fraud statistics here, Jeff. Look at this. So Alaska reported 611,000 registered voters in 24. Alaska had 540,000 citizens of voting age in 2024. Senator Murkowski opposes the Save America Act. Well, what do you know? Believe it or not, Lisa Murkowski is married. Her husband of nearly 4 decades is Vern Martell, and he's a registered Democrat.
Of course, she's a Democrat.
She's a Democrat too. She just ran on the Republican Party, but she's a Democrat. By the way, John Fetterman is more of a Republican than this witch.
Of course.
My God, look at the boils on that face. Holy cow. Let's continue on. Michigan reported 8.2 million registered voters in 24. Michigan's voter age citizen population was 7.6 million in 2024. Senator Lisa Slotkin, Democrat, opposes the Save America Act. According to U.S. Census Bureau CVAP estimates, Illinois had 9 million voting age citizens in 2020. Illinois reported 9.7 million registered voters in 2020. Senator Dick Durbin opposes the Save America Act. Maryland reported 4.5 million registered voters in 2024. Maryland's citizen voting age population was 4.4 million in 2024. Maryland has more registered voters than voting age citizens eligible to vote. Senator Chris Van Hollen, Democrat, opposes the Save America Act. Here's another proven scam in black and white. In 2024, the District of Columbia had 674,000 registered voters, but only 502,000 citizens of voting age. This is why Democrats are against the Save America Act. It's happening in about 35 states. And this one, finally, Jeff, the cop pulls over a guy and says, "Hey, can I see your ID?" And the passenger in the car says, driver says, "No, sir, I'm voting today."
That's so perfect.
That's spot on right there. You gotta love it. It's spot on.
Well,
but don't worry, Jeff. There's no voter fraud. We were told there's no voter fraud, Jeff.
No, everything is perfect.
How about John Fetterman? Look at John Fetterman's not doing so well with Democrats, Jeff. We just saw that we played the Trump clip where CNN says 100% support for MAGA, which they've never seen before.
Largest story, Mr. Berman. And I would just say that John Fetterman is doing as well with Pennsylvania Democrats as the New York Giants are as liked in the state of Pennsylvania or the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I mean, just look at this. Among Pennsylvania Democrats, the net approval of Fetterman, back in 2023, he was a Democrat liberal darling. He was at plus 68 points. Look at how low he has fallen down to negative 40 points. He's down there with the Titanic among Democrats in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And, you know, to put a comparison point on, you know, we always talk about how Chuck Schumer is not well liked by the Democratic base nationwide. Chuck Schumer has a net popularity rating of about -2 points. He is 38 points more popular than John Fetterman is with Pennsylvania Democrats. And I was also looking at Kristen Sinema, who, of course, ended up leaving the Democratic Party in Arizona. She was considerably more popular just before she shifted over than John Fetterman is at -40 points.
Is this a 108-point swing?
This is an 108-point swing. Very good mathematics here.
I was honestly thinking, is that even possible? All right. How does this compare to other? He faces a primary. If he wants to run again, you know, he faces an election in 2 years. If he runs in a Democratic primary, how have senators who lost their primaries, how does their whole situation compare to this?
I would just know John was like off on the screen going, what? Wait a minute. 108-point swing. You never see anything like that, but my goodness gracious. I mean, just take a look here. Okay, 2,000 senators' own party net ratings about when they lost a primary. Bob Smith plus 15, Arlen Specter plus 13. Of course, he switched parties to Democrats. It didn't work for him from a Republican. Plus 6, Joe Lieberman. Dick Lugar was at 0 points. Lisa Murkowski was at -15 points. All of these were considerably more popular than John Fetterman is right now at -40 points. He is below the lowest, the ones who actually got beat in a primary. There is no historical analog to this. That is how unpopular John Fetterman is with Pennsylvania Democrats.
That's amazing. I think he would probably pull in at least a plus 5 or plus 10 for Republicans if they had a vote of someone, a Democrat they at least favored. I would think, Jeff, there would probably be somebody like a Fetterman. This girl, Jeff, watch this. This is kind of.
I gotta run, Chip. I gotta run.
All right, let's watch this clip.
At 9:45. I'm going to. Everything's set up in the Ghost.
Where are you heading?
Run. I gotta leave.
Okay,
Someone's
we'll
coming.
All right, we're
Everything's set up.
I'll play everybody out here.
You're good to go.
Yep. Good to go.
Okay. Cool. Thanks.
Good to go. See you later.
Talk to you in a minute.
See you tomorrow. So let's take a look at this clip right here. This is a girl checking her logging into her account for her student loan.
I finally hit 120 payments for my public service loan forgiveness, and I just want to show you something. So check out my principal balance. That's what I took out, $49,000. This is what I owe, $50,000. Now, that bothers me because I've paid $25,000. It's all such a scam.
So funny. Think about that. She borrowed $49,000 and now she owes $50,000. How is that even possible? How? I don't know. This is exactly where we are these days. I mean, with this kind of nonsense. Here's something. Let's jump over to the UK. So let's listen in here.
Now or no prospective government of the UK has the guts to stop it. If they want to take strong action to prevent the Islamification of the UK, then it's going to mean big trouble for them. They don't want trouble. They look 4 years ahead. They will kick the can down the road to somebody else. And I think the end result of that is very likely to be civil war in Britain, where the indigenous
physical civil war,
actual civil. I'm not talking about the American Civil War. No. Armies. I'm talking about something more like Northern Ireland, but on a much more intensive scale, where you have the indigenous British and the some of the immigrant population and the British government all on three different sides fighting against each other. And if I'd be very surprised if that doesn't happen, because there's no prospect of the government, any government today, stopping this from occurring.
It's amazing. Joe Buddy says he paid off all his debt. That's good to hear. Great if you can do it. Here we go with so some more British news here. Let's talk to Sadiq Khan, who is the mayor. Let's hear from him, the mayor of London. He says, British values mean defending everyone's right to practice their faith freely. In London, I'm proud Christians, Jews, Hindus, Sikhs, Muslims, and others can celebrate in Trafalgar Square. Singling out Muslims isn't British values, it's prejudice. And John Cleese, who you may know from the Monty Python days, comedian, actor, said this, Dear Sadiq Khan, I think some of the prejudice to do with singling out Muslims is to do with their stated intention to kill infidels, especially the bit about beheading them. You see, the other religions don't promise that. And that could not be more spot on of a statement. I mean, it is a sad time. And if we look at this, more weird stuff coming out of here from Great Britain. Joshua Phillips says, the more I read this, the more I realize how utterly illiterate. It is utterly illiterate. How exactly, and let me show you this first. The Daily Mail put this story out. Shakespeare's birthplace, which I have visited, to be decolonized over fears his success benefits ideology of white European supremacy. Let me read that again. Shakespeare's birthplace to be decolonized. I don't know what that means. They're deleting it or getting rid of it over fears of success benefits of the ideology of white Europeans. Joshua Phillips is saying, how exactly do you decolonize someone's birthplace? He lived there. No one came and conquered his house. It's just a man of a house that exists. These people are exhausting. And I concur with that. Like, what are they even talking about? It's such a ridiculous thing. This was, I'm not going to play I'll play the video, but not the sound. But this was basically Birmingham, what they're talking about. And you can see this massive gathering. You can see what they're doing in Trafalgar Square. The funny thing is that why is it that when Muslims go to another country, they got to do this in public places? They don't do it in public places in the countries that they live. It's all about domination. It's about control. It's about grandstanding. That's all it's about. That's pretty much the entire sort of bit that any of that matters. Has nothing to do with almost anything else, which is quite sad, I have to say. We're going to segue to Iran. Mark, let's see. This is, hang on a second, let me get you the right name here. This is Victor Davis Hanson, and he's followed wars for 50 years. And here's what he has to say about the Iran war.
Enough evidence to see how things are really going. Europeans would never agree to go anywhere near Iran unless they thought the tide was turning and they think that we're going to win. Otherwise, they would keep still. And the reason that the petronations of the Gulf survive is they have their finger in the wind and they're very attuned to the climate. And when you have Al Jazeera praising the United States bombing campaign and saying that it's been underestimated and it's brilliant and effective, you get the feeling that they think not only should the United States finish the job, but it can and will finish the job. And then when you start to see tactical aircraft like Warthogs and Apaches, that means that they're offering almost ground and sea support to hit targets. There's nothing, there's no defense at all when you have that type of aircraft flying at will in Iranian airspace. So you put it all together, and I think it's pretty clear that this rope-a-dope strategy that they have that we're going to tire before they are is dependent on just public opinion, the midterms in the United States. And if Trump sees it through, and I think he will, I think they're going to fall pretty soon. And
See that? So there you go. And he's making a really good point here. Everyone like boots on the ground, forever war nonsense. Trump's saying it's wrapping up. He put a statement out about that. That was never the intention. But of course, the left wants everything to fail on the right. Orwell says, all go into plan. The Georgia Guidestones were demolished. But the elite still want the numbers down one way or another. Just have us fight each other. Zelensky's killed most of his men in Ukraine. And he's the one that doesn't want peace. Putin said forth, oh, hey, I'm ready to settle. I'm ready to, put this behind us. Zelensky doesn't want it. He thinks he's going to get territories back. They're not. Matter of fact, these people in these territories he wants back speak Russian. They don't want anything to do with the Ukraine. So they've even voted like over 80%. So it's just, to me, it's just more and more garbage in that loan as well. Chad says interest on student loans is compounding during the scamatic when they weren't paying. That's right. So you did get that was the thing. It's like, oh, you don't have to pay, but your interest was compounding, which is why. But I mean, pay $25,000 and you still owe more than you borrowed for what? Some goofy. I mean, this is why traditional education is going to get hurt quite a bit. If you see what's happening, the reports that I'm reading on AI, all these companies are using it as an excuse to basically get rid of, I would say people. It's not really like one of the things that I watched was Jensen Huang, who's the CEO of NVIDIA, came out and said that these companies aren't thinking about it the right way. You're empowering your people to do better, which means higher earnings. And what happens, funny, I was talking to a buddy last night about who's got a couple years on me. He's like, this always repeats nonstop, where you have CEOs which are consistently someone's calling me here. Hang on. There we go. Where you have these CEOs who are consistently looking to cut the bottom line, make the quarter. We got to show improvement. So the easiest way to do that is get packages out, cut people. You saw that Oracle cut a bunch of people, over 10,000 people. And what they said was setting up brand new environments for customers. They were doing it in 24 hours. You used to take a team of 2 weeks to do this, right? Yeah, I get you're going to get efficiencies. Problem is when something goes wrong, like what happened with AWS when AI started rebuilding one of their instances and took down a portion of the internet because they put the production server down and they started doing more of that. This is where you actually get this sort of people who are going to use AI as a scapegoat to maybe show some initial benefits of getting rid of people. It happened with Jack Dorsey's company. Jack Dorsey's company, how silly that was. Like they got rid of half of their employees, but somebody posted the real numbers of his companies that are kind of struggling a little bit, not showing that, oh, we're getting efficiencies with AI. That's the spin. That's not necessarily what's happening. But AI is eliminating a lot of these entry-level jobs. You got kids coming out of college. What are they going to do? Thing was, you got your foot in the door and you started from there. Well, top law firms around the country in the United States are already reporting that what they would hire somebody junior, they lost money on them for the first 3 years, 1 to 3 years, because of the training, putting them through the trials, getting them into the routine. They're saying that AI, and this is not ChatGPT or Claude, this is very specific AI, which is trained on law. There's a couple of organizations out there that just deal with legal side of things, that the AI is doing better than their 1 to 3 years of these juniors that they lose money on because they're grooming them to be partners. They're grooming them to bring them in the organization long term. They're investing in them, but they lose money on them. AI is doing the performance of 1 to 4 year juniors, and it's doing it better. It's more efficient and it's less costly. So you're going to see a lot of these juniors. And meanwhile, there's statistics that come out that says that the first time in history, at least the last 40 years, you have more people entering law school than ever before in the United States. Well, I don't know what they're going to do because a lot of it's going to be AI. Now you need to understand, to look at the AI, and you need to be able to have the state of mind to know that, yes, this is BS, this is hallucination, this is good, this is bad. You need to be able to have that critical thinking going on, because when you have experience, you understand, I can tell right away that, and you say, like, put the citations. It can cite, it can cite stuff and the AI stuff. You go read it, like, no, that's not what it said. Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. I made a mistake. So when you think about all this stuff, it comes to one thing: you got to be vigilant. You got to pay attention to what's going on, and a lot of what's happening is being filtered. I saw something at one of the other big tech companies has a lawsuit against them because they were filtering out anybody who was over 40 years old. They were like, nope, you're not even getting a shot at this at all. You're done. So there's a big lawsuit. And because they blamed it on the AI, they're like, oh, the AI was doing it. Yeah, I'm sure the AI was responsible for that. So you have people that are 41 years old in the prime of their careers who have some good solid experience, 10, 15 years of experience, and they're getting filtered out. So what does that say about the industry? And what about AI and what it's doing? So it doesn't do it without human intervention. So it's a little bit of a ridiculous thing. Anyway, that's all the time we have. Jeff already bailed. I'm getting ready to go. We're going to see you guys on the next one, and that'll be tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Guys, come on back here. We'll do more crypto news along with some geopolitical news, and we value your comments, and you guys are a significant part of the show. So guys, have a great rest of your weekend, depending on where you're coming in from, and we will see you on the next one. Chip and Jeff, ow!
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.